got.
There's your disembodied voice count.
Mysteriously.
Wait, now, do you want me to look to see if you were in it? I'll look.
We'll just call him Charlie.
If I was in it, then I'd come back.
Charlie.
Hello, angels.
Got it.
You're not in it.
I'm not in it?
Now you're in it.
Okay.
And I'll still be in it.
Good evening. This is Sean Neblights with the Nightly News. First story.
$1 million.
Oh, golly. All right, guys. I know Sean would like some time. Some time?
Yeah, sure.
I'll figure it out.
Okay. Actually, I might take a few minutes myself.
Oh,
Sean, why don't you go?
Sure. I'm going to bring my phone out to read from an email for just a second.
If you must.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, this is last weekend. It was the first, negative thing I really heard about at Braddock Street, which wasn't what bothered me. I try to be pretty good about getting constructive feedback and using it because I like to learn, and getting better at my job is always good. What I struggle with was what the person was complaining about, and then the tone they were using to tell me that they were complaining about it. And so I think I've sent, everyone knows that email, the first one. And then I read the second one
I don't
earlier.
think Bill does. I think you told us during lunch
Did you by any
last
chance
week.
read? Okay. So I got a email response to a small group leader training, and the person misunderstood what I said at that time, and then sent feedback running with what they had misunderstood and saying that I had patronized them. Hold on, let me see all the words I got in here. How awkward and he felt, how embarrassed he was, felt blindsided, felt patronized, and in his opinion, in the vernacular, I blew it. That, to be fair, was the second bullet. The first bullet was your organization delivery of the material is very effective. Thank you. They went into all that stuff about how his particular time was essentially wasted because he'd been there, and then more misunderstanding what I said. Ended with, I'm very disappointed about all of this and how improving my effective human relational skills are paramount to my success. What bothered me was the tone, but also that he CC'd Kirk in his first response to me, so I never had a chance to clarify anything. He also said it at 7:30 Sunday morning, which is my mistake to read it, not knowing it was going to have such fun stuff in it. And so I'd responded and said, thanks for willing to share your feedback. I tried to call you, didn't work. Want to send out clear a few things up and say communication is very important to me. It's disappointing me that my miscommunication led you to feel this way. I should have said Howard. But I was like, I would never intend for you to feel awkward, embarrassed, patronized, blindsided, or anything along those lines. Sorry it came across in a manner that led you to believe otherwise. I didn't think your time was wasted. At some point soon, I would love to have a chance to make amends, move forward, happy to talk via phone or email in person. Just appreciate the opportunity to try and better communicate with you. Also be understanding if you're not interested. Talk to you soon. Came back, said, I accept your apology. I'm still disappointed, very unhappy with what happened, but I'm not going to overly belabor the case. 4.5 paragraphs later, he lists all the different things that could have happened, none of which I said couldn't happen. So including yeah, if you want to be a small group leader at 8:45, you still can be. He talked about how that would have been nice to have heard me say.
Okay.
And ended with the tone that I was, trying to give the benefit out on. Include lots of quotation marks, lots of exclamation marks, lots of parentheses, lots of capital letters to emphasize things, including a moment where he's like, would you want to receive that kind of treatment? You in all capital letters. And what are possible ramifications for a church member to receive that kind of treatment? Which I struggled with responding in a way that was like, you've misunderstood me and you're patronizing me. But I don't feel like I can say that right now because you're accusing me of patronizing you and me saying, no, you are. However, eloquently put that is. And so I ended up coming back from that and just saying, thanks for additional words. It's indeed a gift from God that we're given opportunities for growth throughout our life. From your words, I believe the product of our miscommunication that we feel like there's no openness to doing things differently. Therefore, I want to express how I would like to know how you'd like to prayerfully consider moving forward. and said, "I am thankful for our conversation and for the opportunity we have to model the kind of Christ-like dialogue that we hope to witness to in the church and our community," which may or may not have been through gritted teeth, but it came out in an email just fine. And he came back with response appreciated. Face-to-face conversation is usually the best way to resolve a problem. However, I simply do not know when that would ever occur. And then he summed up what he had said. Which, no, it made me laugh too, because I was like, what do you mean you don't know when that would, like, at church, you goof. Like, that's when it would occur. And then he had the thing about, I expressed dismay and provided feedback more than you probably ever wanted over what happened during the 8:45 class assignment portion at the end. And then added, you've had a very busy 6 months, almost, at BS. I love BS UMC, I was telling him that. With many life-changing events, I'm praying that it will be a blessed year. But it was this, throughout the week, like he went days between the two responses. And so I called him, didn't call me back. Emailed him,
I
waited
know
3
why I
days.
can't find the time to get coffee with you.
Why is that?
He's writing emails.
Yeah, you're right. Just spending all that time crafting these masterpieces of patronization.
So, what did he misunderstand?
One, what my understanding was, I asked him what he wanted to do, and then I was like, would you feel comfortable waiting because we want to have 2 groups because we don't know how many people are going to come to this thing. And I had said, I'm being conservative with our starting groups because we don't know how many people are coming, and I want to make sure you're all set up for when I'm not here, because I'm having a baby's coming, and I'm not going to be there for that. Out of the group of 5, 4 were perfectly fine with that. They also happen to be the 4 that are co-leading different groups. I also asked 2 of those people to not lead their own and to be willing to sit in on somebody else until we find out how many people are coming. And so he took that the wrong way. And
So
then
he was the odd man out then?
yes, he was the odd man out. But I also offered, I was like, I asked if he knew what he wanted to do, and his words were, I'm just trying to figure out if I want to do something. And so I took that as a less of a committal than the other 4 had given me. And so it was like, if you'd like to, you can sit on this group, or we can break you out afterwards when we know how many people are coming. And that is how he perceived all of that.
And that's how he perceived
The affront.
the affront.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so to be told that I was patronizing to do that, and yet to have the way he wrote the email was troublesome. So the other part that was challenging was when I told Kirk about it, or Kirk got CC'd, so he knew about it. He told me that my job was to bend over backwards to fix this, but as of that morning, to just put that in my head and focus on the sermon I had to preach, and focus on worship, and then could get to it later. And that he was not, like with his kids, it did not bother him that I made a mistake. He just was hopeful to see how I would handle it afterwards, and how I'd react to it. To which, as you all might be able to guess, I was thrilled to hear feedback in that form. And that's the last I talked to him about it, because I didn't think that anything really good would come from it. He did respond after I sent the one email and said it was a good response. And then that's all. He did not respond at all. He did not weigh in. He did not do anything along those lines. So.
Did you ask him for any clarity on what it meant to bend over backwards to?
I was not in a place to ask clarity for that question. I think I just said okay, and didn't want to have that conversation. We were also pressed for time because it was 8 o'clock and the first service was 8:30. So it may not be a terrible idea to follow up and ask. I remember when you said this. Now that this is like technically a thing in the past, you meant bend over backwards. What does that look like to you? What is an example of that? So I kind of was looking to talk about and see if there was stuff I could have done differently, or if it seemed like I handled it as best as I could given the circumstances.
Yeah. So your responses back to him were to try to clarify what you were doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? To apologize for the way he misunderstood it.
What I was trying to do was like apologize that he felt that because of our conversation you felt this way.
Yeah.
sorry about that. And then what do we do now?
Okay.
And so the second email, we were joking about how, like, I accept your apology, but I'm still going to say more stuff and make you apologize again. I knew not to apologize again, because if you accept my apology, there's nothing to apologize for. And I was very close to wanting to engage a lot. In the first email, he had written stuff along the lines of how, like, he wasn't a child, or he wasn't born yesterday, is what he said. And, like, just what I would say was projecting the crap out of our conversation, how he felt, because there were a lot of things that I didn't say. But I did not know how to do that over email in a way that wasn't just going to add fuel to the fire.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy that he managed to sum up in only 2.5 paragraphs what he wants to do moving forward.
Which is?
Not be part of small groups, and I guess if we talk again, great. That's where, fine.
So he's kind of taken himself out of a working relationship with you?
Yeah, he took it out from the beginning, but didn't clarify it until now, which is also doesn't make sense for what he's complaining about or what he's protesting in all this. And then now that it's almost done, I'm wondering if responding along the lines of, like, in the future, I'd really appreciate you coming directly to me if you have an issue versus feeling like you need to include someone who wasn't there in the conversation. Because I felt like it was an unfair thing for me to then have to go back to Kirk and be like, but that's not how it happened. Because that feels very defensive, and I wasn't trying to be defensive. It just felt like a very, like, to excuse the language, just felt like a dick move to do that. And that the person doesn't have any understanding of how they were doing the very things they were complaining about. And then what do I do with that?
So do you know anything about, is this sort of normal behavior for this person? You have no idea?
Everyone who I've mentioned it to, I think it might be one of the first times he ever got involved with something. Which to me is a relief to, like, oh, found it out now. Like, I'd rather this happen to me than happen to someone who's trying to be in a small group and all that stuff. But everyone else was like, he's a really nice guy. Like, I believe you. This isn't nice. What's going on here? So.
Well, let's go back to the apology. What purpose do you think that served?
Apologizing. Affirming that.
First of all, do you think you needed to apologize?
Yes, I felt like apologizing once was something that I should do, because however it happened, this conversation happened, and he left feeling this way, and so it would be unfair, even if I feel like on my perspective there's no reason for him to feel that way. It'd be unfair for me to say you shouldn't feel like that, because that's not right.
Mm-hmm.
He's entitled to his feelings, and so that's why I tried to word it in a way that was, I'm sorry, a little more eloquent than I'm sorry you feel that way, because I had a feeling from the tone that if I said that, it would be, it's not that I feel that way, it is that way, and didn't want to go into that type thing. So I made a guess there, and so tried to phrase, I'm sorry that, again, I said could have said our, that the miscommunication led us to this place. And then I forget where I've heard it or learned it, but the idea of, like, once you do that, the focus is on moving forward. It's not on dwelling on what happened. And so for him to dwell heavily on what happened, and his closing thing on that email was along the lines of, like, I hope this is helpful so that this doesn't happen to anyone else again. We're in the midst of having someone who had a stroke. Their wife got in a car accident right afterwards. You guys may know about that because they live here. And then a woman who's his age who's in hospice care and dying. I'm like, this is nothing. Like, F you. You are not my biggest concern this week. And it was hard not to project past experiences where I've talked to someone who was everything that happened to them was the worst that could ever happen. And forget everything else you might possibly go on. and that he never once asked what my perspective was. He just assumed the entire time he knew what it was. And those are things I feel like as a pastor it's my job to point out to him. But again, I don't know how to do that in an email that doesn't just cause more friction.
Mm-hmm.
And if he doesn't want to provide an opportunity to meet in person, then it's almost like, well, is it just better to just let this die and I learned not to ask this person to leave again?
Yeah. So, the reason I ask about the purpose of
The apology.
the apology and whether you felt like you needed to apologize is that, apologies recognize that the person who was apologizing was in the wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's not apologizing for how somebody else feels. Okay? So if you honestly think you did something wrong to affront this person, then you ought to apologize. But if you didn't, okay, then what is your next step? And anything that offers clarity without you having to be explaining or being on the defensive is productive time. But trying to smooth things over, make somebody else feel better, and I don't know, maybe this guy was just looking for an excuse to not be in a small group later. He got into it and said, I really don't have time, but rather than say, I was really stupid and didn't figure about how much time it would take, I decided to pick a fight with the person who's trying to stretch. I don't know what his motives are. And you probably don't know what his motives are.
And frankly, I don't even really care.
So
that much
it's to the reality of the moment at the time that what I don't know that you have the next step here, other than the ball's kind of in his court, and if he wants to pursue more of it, then I would tell Kirk, look, this is what I've done, this is how I've responded, and I'm going to leave it there.
I think, and that's, I'm comfortable with that, and it's one of those. I know it's a growing area because of how much of my head has been on it the entire time for the past week. I think yesterday that it finally gotten to where it was like, all right, whatever. We started announcing the small groups that are coming up, so it was a thing in the bulletin. So I was joking with Katie that I was ready for more flack when he sees that and his name's not on it, and was assuming based on the communications that it would be similar to saying, it was one of those like, why didn't you, like him wanting some kind of power in a sense to be like, because I have a problem with you, you have to stop what you're doing and come to me.
Well, it sounds like he wants to be pursued.
Yeah. And I did not want to do that pursuing. And so when I called and emailed, I didn't do anything else. Kirk said I should have called him again. And I don't want to treat anyone special because they have complained to me. Because I feel like that sets a precedent that all you have to do is complain to me and say I did something wrong, and I'm just going to drop everything I'm doing. And so in that sense, I felt like I handled it the best that I could. And I guess today is when I'll find out at staff or after staff if other people, or not other people, if Kirk perceives differently. I'd actually be really annoyed if you brought it up in staff. But my guess is, with the week that we have, it's just going to disappear.
So if he does bring it up in staff and you're feeling annoyed, what are you going to do?
I'm curious as to why this is coming up right now. And then here is what I've done. Is there anything else you want to talk about in regards to it?
Yeah. So in my judgment, I think I've done what I needed to do here. And, Lily, say it in my language. I think I've done what I needed to do. I think it's now up to him to
do what he needs to do.
do what he needs to do.
Yeah. So, and I feel good that I'm at peace with that part. It's like, yep, he is where he is, and I don't have to be there.
But this has been stirring for a couple of weeks?
Just a week.
Just a week?
So
Oh,
I got,
just a week?
Yeah, I got
Just
this
a week.
feedback last Sunday morning,
Okay.
and then called, sent an email Sunday afternoon. Didn't hear Monday, didn't hear Tuesday, didn't hear Wednesday. Finally sent an email Thursday night. And that's the habit I need to break, because I saw it and I tried to do the preview, and that was where I saw the however and that there was more. I was like, well, how much more is there? And I opened it and just scrolled quick. But it was one of those, you see the caps and you see the exclamation marks, and you're like, well, that's just noise.
Mhm.
So I actually read through it word for word Saturday, I think, trying to live into, I don't want to be dealing with this on my day off. But it was hard not to, it wasn't really even a day off, actually, that's not true, because I visited the person in hospice care on Friday. So it was hard not to leave, didn't come up during that visit, but when I was leaving, to be like, this is what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing right now, not thinking about this yahoo that's, I can't think of the phrase to describe it, that's okay, so.
So I guess my question to you is how can you kind of let this guy go?
I think I got there this weekend.
How can you do it sooner?
One, making sure that I open emails during working hours and not other times. But two, I think just living into there were definitely feelings of like something's wrong and I need to do something about that. And so I think I'm proud of the growth I have and that I didn't just like drop everything and bend over backwards. But like just being at peace with like, I've done what I can do right now, and I don't have control over anything else.
So normally are you a person who is really bothered and can't find peace knowing that somebody's unhappy with you?
Been a long work in progress
Okay.
with that. Because for the most part, work, like at home, I definitely struggle with that. That was a big part of a learning experience I had in a relationship prior to my wife, was that I was just not okay with that, and it took some counseling and some working through to work through that. Usually with work, I'm able to let it go more, but I think because of I pulled a Carl that week, and it was a 55-hour week.
That's a lot of hours.
It is. It's more than 40. And then had a 12-hour day on the Monday feeding into that. So in the course of those 8-9 days, had done a lot, and I thought I learned in student teaching that I was able to do work and like let the work go. The first time I found a worksheet when I was student taught on the floor that was like crumpled up, I was like, but I made this thing. Why don't you appreciate it? So to have that feedback coming after I'd done all that work that week, I was just like, well, this is stupid. And I think that lowered the fences a little bit more for stuff to get to me and for me to dwell on it more. And to wrestle with that not feeling okay. I think it came from fatigue and not self-care. So I think when I'm functioning at the right level of self-care or work stuff like that doesn't usually stick with me.
Okay. But this week you were not doing what you normally
It's been a solid month of not doing what I need to do self-care wise. So that adds to it.
Well, how do you break that pattern?
Taking care of myself. Making it more of a priority. I think it's easy for me to overfunction in day-to-day stuff at home because Katie is so tired from the pregnancy, which is not her fault. It's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah, you did it to her.
I did.
That's right.
We did it together. Thank you very much. So look at me owning that. So that has made it hard for me to want to do anything other than have junk time, because at least I don't have to think during junk time. And for working out, it doesn't take a lot of thought, but it takes enough to figure out what I'm going to do and how I'm going to schedule it in the day that I haven't made the time to do it.
Okay. Okay. Carl, Heather. Anything for her?
I mean, you kind of covered it with Bill, but just, I wonder, when you receive emails like this, and again, you just basically work this out with Bill, but, well, maybe I'm trying to get my own answer out of this question.
That's okay. Give me a transition.
What other things do you need to be done with this situation? Like, are there things that you need to do with other people in order to put something to rest? Does that make sense? I think I'm totally trying to get an answer here, sorry.
What, like, stripping back a lot of it, it's one of those feelings where, like, I just want someone to tell me it's okay right now. Like, not this person to tell me it's okay, but, like, just someone to be like, it's fine. Like, this is not...
Like, it's fine, you've handled it, or it's fine, those feelings are valid?
It's fine. It's fine that I feel upset about it, and it's fine to let it go. Like, kind of getting that. And...
So do you get that through talking with other people, or can you do that on your own? I don't think there's right.
I'm working on the second.
Uh-huh.
I felt like I needed the first this particular time, and so I looked for that from the pastor I worked with prior to this. I just sent him the email that says, like, am I crazy, or is this person come across a certain way? And he just shot back and was like, you're not crazy. And then I asked Katie, I was just like, if you heard this, how would you feel about it? And, you know, just hearing that kind of affirmation was enough to get me to at least settle. And that's when I made the call, sent the email, and then I was good for, like, I kind of joked about it here, I joked about it for a few days, but I was pretty much fine until the second one came in, and it was more of the same. I'd gotten to where it was, maybe he was just upset, and people do dumb things when they're upset, and that's
Sure.
whatever.
So I guess my question would be, sort of looking forward and thinking into your context that you're in,
Mm-hmm.
is there a precedent for people sort of planning stuff and not telling people and doing what he was accusing you of doing at all?
I don't know.
In the church you're at right now? Because if there is, you're probably going to get more emails like this, not just from him, but from other people at some point, not even realizing you've done anything because of the culture you're in more than anything you've done.
So, like, planning an event and inviting someone to it and then feeling like they didn't need to be there, that kind of thing?
I mean, maybe they feel like somebody's made the decision that they're not actually going to be a part of it ahead of time.
Yeah, there's definitely a precedent for that.
And it's possible this could have happened to him before, and that's why he hasn't been involved in anything before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to defend him because that second email was just ridiculous. but I am trying to point out that this is something that could turn into a pattern.
Sure.
And I guess what you really need to
Be
think
aware
about,
of.
I guess,
Yeah.
or be aware of is how you're going to live into that, because the culture doesn't change overnight. And
Yeah, it wouldn't be healthy for every
What
time.
is the genogram of your church culture? What patterns do you see through past
Squiggly line here,
leadership?
squiggly line there, communion juice here.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think those are worthwhile
Mm-hmm.
insights and questions.
Yeah.
So as you've been there almost
It's almost 6 months.
6 months, what are you learning about Braddock Streets? What's their history of conflict in the church, and how's that been handled?
The current staff does not like handling conflict.
Okay.
They avoided what I would say is almost at all costs. Quick example, as we're redoing Sunday school hours, someone needs to tell the lady who's wrestling, I think, with signs of dementia, that she probably shouldn't be the Sunday school superintendent anymore. No one's taken that up, and I voice, like, I don't feel like I'm the right person to do that because I'm new, and it's going to look really bad if I just show up and tell this person I don't really know that well, we need you to find something else to do. And, like, it gets, like, there's crickets. And so the last meeting I was at invited the children's minister to do that with me, and it was one of those like, oh, okay, I guess. And I heard feedback later that I should not be surprised if at that time during that we planned a meeting that something comes up. And it's just one of those like, this is great
Mhm.
to see that coming down the road. And then I'm sure I want to doubt the stereotypical responses, but it's hard when they get reinforced. The patterns that we see, that would be me that had done that to this person, unless it goes well, which would be lucky. So patterns of not handling conflict, patterns of not communicating change very well, and patterns of the response to flack being, let's stop what we're doing and change what we're doing. To give in to this response, all of which may or may not have been reinforced as recently as since I've been here, with the worship schedule and everything like that.
So comforting that your senior pastor is my senior pastor's mentor.
Yeah.
So comforting.
Yeah.
'Cause everything you named is exactly what happens at Leesburg, so
Yeah.
it's great.
And
So
Kirk said something last week along the lines of how he felt like it was everything that happened worked out because a particular community of people felt like their voices were heard and they had a say. And it's like, I feel like that's when you like change the history book around to like sound a lot nicer than it actually was. Because my joke
Southern
is
heritage.
right,
It is.
yeah,
Or
State
look at the
rights.
wonderful reservations that the Indians lived on.
exactly.
They wanted
People that-
casinos.
They wanted the casinos. They wanted to come over on these boats from Africa. My joke has been like, I haven't seen any of this conflict because all of the upfront face-to-face conflict in council meetings happened before I got there. But talk about seeing the side effects of it and everything else that gets lived out. And it'd be funny if Kirk knew that might have been part of it. I don't know if he does or not. I could ask him if he has any history with Brian or knows of anything else that's going on, and chose not to say that in a moment where it could have surfaced itself. That would be lovely to know. And so, again, there's part of me that has played with the idea of going back to this person and being like, so now that like we're at an equilibrium of sorts, like I'd really like to know why you chose to react in this way, and would remind you to, you know, take heart, and if you're willing to say these things to me, say it to my face. Don't CC people and triangulate. And I'm not sure what his goal of CCing Kirk was in the first place. And all those questions, and part of me is like, move on. I don't want to swell that up.
What? I mean,
Go for it.
there seems to be a goal behind the CCing. What was he angry about?
Well, how I talked to him.
Maybe, but
He
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 sounded
felt like
more.
he was left out.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna say I would say he was more angry, just based on what you read. I would have interpreted it as he was left out. I'm
He
not
felt
saying
like he was left
angry.
out.
Okay.
So it makes sense that he would CC Kirk, so he knew